I'm APEX777.eth, as I'm known on Farcaster, Twitter, and probably some other places I can't remember. I'm a builder on Base. I've been building on Base pretty much since inception. I think I deployed a contract within 4 or 5 days. I'm massive fan of the ecosystem. As soon as I got involved with it, I just couldn't look away, couldn't really look anywhere else. I suppose before I dive into that, it probably makes more sense to give a bit of history about me and crypto. I got into crypto in like 2016, 2017. I was a gamer and was looking for a new GPU. And I was wondering, I was like, well, why are these so expensive? Like, I don't understand why they cost so much more money and I can't find one anywhere. And then led me down the rabbit hole of everyone was mining this coin called Ethereum. And I was like, what's this? And then within like a couple of weeks, I had like this mining rig with 6 GPUs and I was kind of hooked on it. Like, and just the whole concept of being able to, produce this asset or this internet money or whatever way you want to frame Ethereum out of electricity back then, but essentially thin air just sort of blew my mind. And I got hooked on it ever since. So like Ethereum was the first crypto I held. I held it before Bitcoin. I had briefly heard of Bitcoin. A guy in college had mentioned it back in like 2013 and I just unfortunately didn't give it my time or didn't really take the time to understand it. So like obviously was a miner for a couple of years, but then started dabbling more and more on chain. Ended up taking part in like DeFi summer of 2020, did a lot of stuff on like Polygon because obviously Ethereum has always been expensive to use, or not really now at the moment with gas, so one guy. But as soon as like, the first version of the L2s came up, got on chain very quickly. And the idea of just like, it went from like when I was doing on L1 back then, like, you'd nearly be afraid to do a transaction to like being on Polygon, I think is where I spent most of my time at the start, just doing tens of transactions a day and not even batting an eyelid at it. So kind of got hooked then really with just like, I suppose, getting on chain and seeing the power of it all. And messed around with a couple of, deployments that did well, not so well, nothing really to, talk about too much, nothing too exciting or that went anywhere. But I would say that
were you building on Polygon before you started building on Base?
No. I was like, it was more stuff I was just messing around with myself, I suppose is the way I could say it. Like it was nothing of any success. I created an NFT collection for myself to look at, to see what it looks like on OpenSea or whatever else. Like, I deployed a coin that, didn't go anywhere, didn't even make it into the kiddie pool. So it was just like more of just, I suppose, a testing ground of what could be done. And then obviously we took part in DeFi summer.
So wait, you're telling me, just real quick, you're telling me there's an NFT collection and a coins out there somewhere that was actually Apex's first NFT collection, Apex's first token?
There like probably is, yeah. And it's like, that's super providence right there. People are into that, aren't they?
Like, we gotta have someone dig that up after the show. But
man, I have to try find that. Yeah, I don't even know what wallet it's under. But what was I going to say? But yeah, like obviously took part in DeFi summer, just got the buzz of it, got the whole idea of composable money, and was hooked. And then and everybody you start getting like scammed and robbed, and you're like, you start to look at it and be like, people are doing this, like, there's the way I look at it is like, you can do this, but do it the right way, I suppose, and that's where I was like, I can do this. I'm a developer, like by background, by day, I am a solution architect / full stack developer. So I work for like a very boring company who is involved with ERP software, and it's really old tech. But I'm obviously a developer by trade, but I don't get to use any of the exciting technologies. So like this lined up with like, this new emerging tech where you've got basically money connected to the internet, just sort of had me hooked straight away. So really started like, built a couple of small things on like, I think Arbitrum, kind of like more contract work. So like I wasn't brand new to building when I landed on Base. I did have like some Solidity skills. But when I speed run back up to when I was on Base, deployed some NFTs early on, deployed some more. I'm most known for the on-chain Dino collection. That's my PFP. So deployed a bunch of basically dinos or CCOs. So deployed
How did you like know,
yeah.
I don't really remember
Yes.
period of time. I know like I wasn't, I mean, I can't really remember too well, but I wasn't like super early to base or anything. Like I was aware of it. I think
Yeah.
sort of launched with on-chain summer roughly. And,
Yeah.
so I sort of like got involved with that to some degree. Wasn't like sort of building on it or anything back then. But I wasn't like sort of aware with like the actual launch, like the timing of it. Like, how did you know, like, okay, base is coming or base is here? Maybe if you found out like the day of or something.
Yeah, no,
I'm gonna go and like sort of speed run and launch one of the first collections here.
Yeah, no, like I definitely found like I heard about it, but didn't really give it too much attention. And then I think what dragged me in was like, was it the ball coin? Was that early? Like you probably don't notice. There was basically like a gigantic. It ended up being a rogue, but like it was like this massive coin exploded. And there was a guy I followed on Twitter who like bought it super early and had all of a sudden made 7 figures on this chain called Base. And I was like, what is this? Like, so then obviously bridged over, started messing around with it. And I was like, yeah, like this looks like it's not one of these L2s. They're just going to vanish, or it wasn't really a big thing, I suppose, back then. But like, it was like, yeah, this is kind of like Ethereum aligned. And, I really like the fact that like it didn't have a native token, which, some people like or don't like. The fact that like the gas with Ethereum was like very important to me. Like, so it's like, I was like very Ethereum aligned, I suppose. So then, yeah, I was like, okay, what's on this chain, what's not. NFTs were hot, and I was like, okay, I'll deploy some NFTs. And then just like, did what a lot of people don't do, is like, I actually spun around afterwards, got to know some other communities, got to know some people. Like I'm in a like chat with like guys who all launched them at the very start, like Dalio Frog, who did the tiny dinos, Goya, who did base nouns, like Vesper, who did some mystical, some stuff. Like these are guys who like as OGs you can get, like, and like just sort of like have rode the wave base with them, like and it's just been like the biggest thing I've noticed between deploying on base and deploying on somewhere else is like in other chains I've found it, I don't know what the story is now, but I've definitely found it, it's not like it's every man for himself. Where on base it's definitely like, it's the collective effort together. Like you'll see like someone deploy an NFT collection and like other NFT collections are happy to share the mint, or there's no real rivalry, I suppose, between projects, and that really hasn't come in, even nearly 2 years later, which is like super cool to see. It just shows like the ethos they have is, he's just like, yeah, everyone bases for everyone. And like, I mean, I know it's like a bit of a meme or whatever, like bases for everyone, or like, everyone can build, like, but like it kind of is for real, like that.
Well,
it's the core.
It's pretty cool. Like you talk about like these OGs, like on base, like Dalo Frog and the base nouns guy, and yourself. And like I remember, you've introduced me to a couple of these guys, and like I was just surprised to learn, and see like who they are, like yourself included. Like these are not, people who worked at Coinbase or something. Like these are people who are coming from like all walks and like very international. Like I think of the few guys you introduced me to, like, I mean, you're in Europe and some of these guys are as well, or like random places in the US. Like it's sort of like a ragtag crew of just like sort of people who somehow were some of the first people to deploy. In this case, a lot of NFT collections, but also just generally building on this. And so it's pretty cool how that happened, especially with the fact that, Base is like an L2 launched by Coinbase. I wouldn't have been surprised if some of the first people to launch stuff were more sort of like, insiders. Not that that's like a negative, or I mean, necessarily. It's just like sort of what you would expect from a Coinbase launched L2. And like, I like Coinbase people, but it's cool that somehow it started with like a more diverse bunch of folks.
Yeah, like more, I suppose, organic. Not that it's not organic, if they're, involved with Coinbase or not, but like it's definitely had like a good organic footing. Like I remember doing like when we were back, this was in like yeah, August 2023 is when we deployed stuff. And then we were like doing a spaces, I think, in like November. Like it was so small, man. It was like, you know, there was like 40 people in the spaces and like Jesse would pop into it. Like it was like minuscule compared to what it was. I used to know every collection, every person that was building, you know, not everyone, but basically, you know, the majority of people. And then now you're just kind of like every day there's new products and there's new people building things and there's new faces and it's just scaled so dramatically and so well, to be honest. And I suppose like flipping what you said, like I am like you are one of the Farcaster OGs where I wasn't. I was quite late to it when I arrived. So I arrived into like Farcaster, I think February 2024, was it? Yeah, I think so. So like, you know, earlier than some, but definitely later than the OG crew. And then like, yeah, definitely got like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I was actually like replying to a cast that DWR was put up. Like I just couldn't understand what Farcaster and Workcast was and what the difference was. It took me a while. I was like, what is this? Like I didn't really get it. The penny didn't drop, I suppose. So it kind of made me slow to get on board. Like I had an account, but like didn't really use it. But then finally got the knack of it. But then once I like, you know, built the frame, let's say, or built something or contributed, like I was just like you, hooked on it and like spend, you know, most of my time on it these days. And like linking back to like the builder energy, like there's nothing like Farcaster, like that's what makes it so good. Like, and I've said this, like, and I'm sure we'll touch on Bale. I've said this multiple times. Like, I feel like it was incubated there, like in like,
Right.
I felt like this kind of safe bubble where you could try things and not be as judged as if you were to launch something like this on X, you know, it's kind of like this, yeah, like a safe zone, maybe this kind of right word to put it like, or like very like open-mindedness that Farcaster has, like, and just support along the way. Like, yeah, really, really cool place, I suppose. And I'm sure we'll touch on it more, like, but, and then that's, when did we meet? We met, like, you launched Base Colors. When
That
was that? March?
June 24.
Was it June 24? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I had done.
And we launched Soulbounds in,
Yeah.
I think, August 24. So it was pretty soon after.
Yeah.
And, yeah, at the time, I'm trying to remember how exactly it came out. I think you were like, we sort of had both discovered each other. I think me through Base Colors and then you through Waveforms. Yeah. I'm like, I'd probably seen on-chain dinos, but I wasn't really familiar. Didn't connect that you were behind both. And it was Waveforms that I was like, oh man, that's really cool. And it was like sort of an obvious alignment with Base Colors, given that you were using, pieces of the Ethereum address to inform the colors of people's waveforms. And there was just like sort of a, you see a lot of people building stuff in crypto, Base or otherwise, that it's a lot of sort of recycling of the same stuff, or, you take this, collection of whatever, some animal and you do it the same thing with another animal or whatever. And it's like, it's all kind of like a lot of it's somewhat undifferentiated. And I saw this and I was like, wait, when you send with Waveforms, like you send your waveform to a different wallet, like it changes the NFT into like that new. And I was like, man, that's like super cool. The fact that you were deriving the art from the ETH address in the first place was super cool. And then, not to go down the Soulbounds rabbit hole, because it's, we already talked about it. Somewhere out there, there's I think a recording of a
space somewhere, I think.
Yeah. So we don't need to go too deep down it, but Soulbounds, obviously we sort of took the ETH address of the minter and created a Soulbounds NFT that split their address into 7 6-digit codes, each of which is like sort of a hex code. So that informed the color and produced this, 7-band, like NFT of colors, which was Soulbound, so you couldn't transfer it. And, like, I love that project. I thought it was such an elegant, combination of your signature and what we were doing with Base Colors. So that was a lot of fun. And then at some point we met in person pretty soon after that, or maybe before.
Yeah, Base Camp. Yeah. No, at Base Camp we met, I think. Or was it before? No, it was before. Yes. I think we DM'd back and forth. We basically just said, like, just chatted about, I suppose, putting stuff on chain, about our projects, and sort of I got the feeling as well, like that you got, like, there's people who get it and people who don't, you know. I don't know whether that's a fair thing to say, like, but you can kind of tell when someone gets why we're here or what we're trying to do. And I kind of got that buzz from you straight away. And I was like, yeah, this is a cool guy who's put like a lot of detail and attention into launching a product here. Like,
it's kind of like, it's a shame to say, but it's almost like, it's like kind of like a vibe check, but that makes it seem like it's even more than it is. It's almost just like a pretty basic, like, are you a real person? But like,
you get what I'm saying though, don't you? Like, it's just this kind of energy you get like off another, not builder, because I don't want to just frame it like as that, like, but like, yeah, off someone else. You just kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, you know, they're kind of here for the right reasons, or they, I suppose the way I always frame it is like, they get it, you know?
And it's like, kind of
just
a
like,
low, sorry to interrupt, but like, it's kind of like a low bar, but like not that many people get over it. Like, at least for me, like the way I look around, like there's definitely a higher bar for, you know, oh man, this guy's actually doing like really cool stuff. But there's just this low bar for like, are you just like this, you know, NPC like reply guy? And nothing wrong with reply guy. Like, reply guy is a good way to, you know, bootstrap your audience. Like, that's how I think I started my Twitter, basically by replying to people with like relevant blog posts that I was writing and stuff like that. So like, there's nothing wrong with being a good old reply guy. I still like to do some replying when I can. But if you like, all you're doing is that for like the next airdrop or whatever, it's just like, you're not like a real person, so to speak.
I mean, like, it's hard to sum up without sounding like you're being like, you know, very cabal or a prick about things. Like, but if you're, I suppose, you just like, I don't know how to sum it, or like, you kind of get it.
You've got the gist.
I mean, they're just, like, they're just here for the right reasons, or like they're, you know, willing to contribute, or contribute in some meaningful way. And that doesn't mean like technically or whatever else. It could be in any way, you know. Like, I get some of the best info from people on Farcaster who, like, you know, don't have any technical skills, you know. I get some of the enjoyment out of those posts, like, so yeah, where were we? Me and you, I think, how we, I
was just gonna say, I think like, so when we did sort of get introduced, from just sort of discovering each other's projects around the same time, like at that time, I think I went and minted like a Dino. Might have been one of my first non-base colors, like NFTs on base. And then like, you pointed me to Dalo Frog, and I got one of those, and I sort of started getting involved. Exactly. Started getting involved with some of these like early NFTs. And I think at that time, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like last summer, but you might have been on Farcaster, but I feel like you were still like more involved with like the sort of base people on Twitter to some, like, which I still is sort of like a foreign thing to me. But I was like, oh man, there's like base people like not on Farcaster where I'm like sort of living. And that's interesting. Like, I kind of thought it was some of these like airdrop people, but I was like, man, like Apex is out here building like really cool stuff. And I was just like totally unaware of all this.
I think like that was probably even more of like, like that kind of helped outside of the Soulbounds club. I feel like you kind of got like more of a Twitter audience. I definitely got more of a Farcaster audience by building something with you. Like, I didn't, you know, I had a very little following. I had built, you know, one or two small things beforehand on Farcaster. But like, I think we both kind of got, you know, more exposure to you to X and me to, let's say, Farcaster as well in that. And I definitely like understood Farcaster more, I think, and started using it more in or around that time. But I was like, yeah, this place is cool, you know. And I think that's what's kind of like I will often do like not polls, but like, you know, I'll ask people periodically, why aren't you on Farcaster? And the answers are like, you know, I think people just don't break through that initial sort of emptiness of when you set up a new account somewhere and don't really know where to put themselves, and whether that's in channels or, you know, following this or that. Or I think what the mistake sometimes they make is they come on and they just follow the same people they follow on Twitter. And like, those people mightn't be very active, or those people mightn't be outside your circle, or, you know, you might find something that you connect with, like, but like, it's cool to see like, I feel like we've tried multiple times to get people over from Twitter, but I feel like in the last wave of the last couple of weeks, more and more people to come over. Definitely more like people I have followed on Twitter for a long time who haven't come over, have now come over, and not just come over. Like people come over and they, make an account and post once or twice, and you never see them again. But like they have been actively staying around for weeks, which is the real tell, I suppose, of someone enjoying something, and they're not just posting, recopying their Twitter posts onto Farcaster. They're either tailoring it to Farcaster or just getting involved in general with the ecosystem, which is really cool. While we're on topic Farcaster, are you going to FarCon?
I am planning to go to FarCon.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not a big, IRL events guy, but New York in May is a good deal. And I've got a wedding like the weekend after, which is why I'm sort of planning it by year, but I'm planning to be there and have to turn on the, IRL social version of myself for a couple of days and get away from the desk.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah, I am looking forward to that now.
I assume.
Yeah, I'm going. I booked like some silly flights where I'm only in New York like 28 hours, so I might have to revisit them and, actually realize that like a 7-hour flight each way. I tend to do it with these things. I kind of just dip in and out as quick as possible. But like it's tiring. So it's not fun. You end up missing things. So, but yes, long story short, I'm going, looking forward to it. And yeah.
It's going to be one of those things where there's too many, there's so many people on Farcaster I've become friendly with over the last, couple of years, especially even in the last 6 months, doing a bunch of these audio calls for the podcast. Like, you and I have spoken before, but most people I know on Farcaster, like I haven't met in person and I haven't talked to on the phone until these podcasts. And to me, it's just like sort of, up levels the connection a bit in a lot of ways. Like I think sort of the first time you talk to someone on the phone and the first time you meet someone in person, those like individual events carry like a lot of weight with a relationship, where I personally think like you can then go back to complete like, digital, where you're just, texting or messaging or whatever, DMing, like all of that's all good. And it's just like sort of that one touch point, either in person, on the phone, or both, that like sort of levels it up a bit. And so that's what's sort of nice. That'll be nice about, the FarCon too, is like you go and you get to just sort of put a face to a name with a bunch of people. And then you go back and, get on the Purple app and do your normal thing. And it's just like, oh, cool. Like we actually met. So that'll be nice.
Yeah. No, it does make a big difference. Like when I launched Fail, like I had done very little, like, foundery things, jumping in calls with people. Like I didn't do crypto calls. I didn't really have a need for it, I suppose. But after it, there was people who wanted to chat to me one-on-one and maybe get a bit of better idea of it. A lot of people from Farcaster, but then like you said, instantly you just get like this much better read of a person. And like not read it and you're trying to suss them out. You just kind of get like, you get their vibe on the timeline a lot clearer when you spend 30 minutes chatting about them. And maybe the direction they're going and stuff. It makes like a huge difference, really. I'm very open, like so much so that like I feel like I should be doing it more, if that makes sense. Because they'll be like, like you just you get a better read from people. And like I met a bunch of Farcaster people when I was over at Denver too. Like that was super cool. And just again, like just puts like a face to the name, really, rather than just like I'm standing here at a blue picture, but I have met you, but like I know that what's behind that blue picture, and just makes it a bit easier, I suppose. And you kind of get there.
I think still though, like when you like, I like to think that everyone I know from like the internet, even if they've met me like once or twice, I like to think that like their association still is overwhelmed by just the blue dot.
It's pretty overwhelming. I love the blue dot. When you and Phil switched, like I was so confused. I just I could not open it. Like I am like one of those people. I think most people are. Like I go by PFP on the timeline. Like I don't even read the name. Like I just kind of know everyone's PFP, and like that just completely threw me.
Maybe I should throw on the dyno for a day. I really enjoyed the. I did like, I forget what the what the like prompt was, but for some reason I decided to like take Phil's PFP, which is just like his actual face, which is kind of funny. And then not that his face is funny, but me taking his PFP, which was his actual face. It's like kind of funny. And then pretending to be Phil a little bit, and like people were like, some people were confused as to whether Phil and I might actually be the same person, which is kind of funny. And I like to run with that joke if people are allowing it. And then like that might have been the first time or sometime around that time, but I think it was that specific change was like the first time I'd actually changed my profile picture basically ever. Like it's always been the blue dot on Twitter. I don't think I've changed it a single time on Twitter. And then Warpcast was always the blue dot until then. And that sort of like unlocked like, oh, I can actually just change my profile picture and like, it's not that big of a deal and it's kind of fun. And like, there's been people, I would say like Light on Twitter, on Warpcast and Six, and maybe there's a few others who have sort of like had these rotational PFPs that they're like switching it, you know, I don't know, every month or something like that. And I really like that because it's just like sort of flies in the face of the, you know, conventional wisdom of, and it's not that it flies in the face, it's like just sort of ignores the fact that people blatantly identify you based on your PFP. And if you change it, less people are going to recognize you. And it just says like, screw it, I'm just going to change my PFP anyway. And it like sort of has a nice vibe. And you get to see this like as the person changing your PFP, you just sort of like, it's like as if you know, it's the digital version of if you sort of are a type of guy who wears like a t-shirt and shorts every day and you just started wearing a suit every day. Like you would actually feel different.
Really throw people off, and you throw people off even around you. But like, where are you going? What are you doing?
But you're inevitably also going to, like the underrated part, I think, is like, if you actually suit up every day, you're going to feel like more legit, or, you know, not more legit, but like, you're going to feel more formal, like whatever, like more put together. And so to a lesser degree, but similar, like you change your PFP, it actually sort of like changes your vibe a little bit. So anyway, when I changed to Phil, you know, I'm not trying to become Phil or anything, so I quickly changed away. But it was a fun 24 hours pretending to be Phil. And then I started changing to like some other colors, which was also kind of fun. And now I'm going to line it up to wear your dino for a day and confuse some people on the timeline, see how that goes.
Yeah, that was funny, let's say, because you also have like a short name too. Are you Jake.eat? No, you're not. You're just Jake.
No, yeah. I've got the base name, Jake, but someone beat me to it on the EMS.
Yeah, man, I was been trying to buy it. There was like some guy sitting on Apex study, and I do like it and do want it, like, but you want like these DNS people, man. I don't know.
Well, you've got the 777, right?
Yeah, and I'll have that, like, and it's become like it just sort of became this meme. Like I couldn't guess my name, and I was like, I'll just, you know, I have no affiliation to the number 777. It was not like something else. It wasn't anything before I landed into the cryptosphere base or whatever else, you know. It just sort of like, I was like, I like this screen name. I'd use it because I like that game, Apex Legends, and I'm big into like racing cars, you know, Apex is a part of Return. I said, yeah, that's a good name. And I was like, damn, Apex study is taking shit, just like every good ANS. So I was like, okay, I'll just put in, name. I was like, I'll put in some sevens after it. And then I was like, I kind of create, not create my own Ethereum address, but I always like, you can generate them. So you can put like numbers, you can change the numbers at the start and at the end, compute it. Like you can't do the whole thing, but you can kind of do the end. Just purely based on, so I know what the address is when I look at it visually. So like I would have another one and, you know, I'd be like, okay, that's that one, or that's that one, that's that one. It's just kind of easier to do. This was like, I've been doing this before ENS was nearly a thing. It's sort of something I did. So I just did sevens first. And then like it just, I don't know, the sevens just started following me around. It's become a bit of a meme on Farcaster. A meme I enjoy now. So like I do, even if I suppose this guy would ever do a deal with me, would I use it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love the sevens. As I've been doing these, I don't know if you knew or if I mentioned, but I've been doing these recordings while walking actually, and it's great.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking as you're talking, and I'm passing a house with the number 770, and so I'm looking around me to see if there's a 777 across the street, but it looks like, unfortunately, this street skipped walking. But I thought walking past the 770 was coincidence enough, so that's kind of cool. As I was talking to Genuine Jack from from Farcaster, similar thing happened where we're talking about the color orange and I passed like a super sweet orange car. So it seems to be a thing.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool. So were you a blue dot before base colors, or the base colors gave you the blue dot?
No, I've been a blue dot since I started a blog in December 2019, and then Twitter January 2020, and podcasts several months after, and all of those things was like the blue dot as the logo, and then the PFP. And yeah, so it was this weird thing where with base colors, it was this thing that like was just tremendously on brand, and just a total coincidence that had been like, obviously I created that PFP with no inclination. I mean, that was in 2019, like NFTs. I didn't even know, what NFTs were. I was barely into crypto back then. Yeah. So it was pretty cool that sort of worked out.
That's hilarious. So basically you were like, I'm going to make an entire NFT collection because I want to have the blue NFT. Yeah. That's kind of what you did. Yeah. I respect that. That's good.
I mean,
very successful one, by the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I also happen to love the idea. I thought, like, I still think, and I'm enjoying it. Like, it's sort of this long-term thing where I sprinted on it for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months, and then a bit less so, but still working for a couple. And now I'm sort of like, it's just sort of tucked in as this thing that, like, I'll work on it when I feel like it. I'll, tweet about it or whatever, write about it, build the next feature or whatever, whenever. But I don't feel a need to like work on it day in and day out. Like, I just don't think it's that kind of project. There's 16 million colors, and what I need to do is basically, go on.
It's something you can definitely dip in and out of. It's not something that you have told people that, going to make their fortune on, for example, or that you're going to ship features every week. People know what it is. It's a very cool collection that has spun up a bunch of secondary collections based off it, and like it has been received extremely well all over. And I like the fact that you can just dip in and out of it whenever you want, like, and you might log on and see some colors minted, you might not, and that's really it. Like, where are we now? Are we at 30,000 yet?
It's almost 30,000. It's like 28 or 29, I think, and it just slowly mints away. And I think basically what I need to do is just continue to level myself up, just personally, in terms of my like sort of digital, identity and growing my following and everything, and building more cool stuff. And then people will say like, oh, like now with what I'm doing with QR, it's like, oh, here's this thing. He's like, okay, like here's this guy, Jake, building this QR thing. That's kind of cool. Who is this guy? Oh, he's got this other thing. Like, oh, base color. Oh, that's kind of cool. I'm going to go make some colors. And like,
that's what happens. Like, like that does happen. Like, I launched sale. People then went and on a spree of minting Soulbounds and Waveforms and picking up dinos. Like, they just kind of go through your history. Like, it's like, and like, this is where like some people like, will give out about people iterating on things or jumping between things. But like, it like, if you can intertwine them, that's great. But two, like, it definitely, like, it builds your brand up and gives you like a better footing, I suppose, as well. Like, you're kind of always, if they're good products, I suppose, or good projects you've done, like like it's cool to see people that actually take the time and say, who is this person? What have they done? And then, there's nothing as good as like seeing them pick one up based on nothing to do with, what you currently released, but they're just like, it's like a sign of respect, really, isn't it? It's like, I like what this guy is doing right now. I really like what he's done beforehand. I like seeing that happen.
And I think it's hard as a builder, like it's hard to know. I don't know. I think, we'll sort of dig in to Veil after this because it's relevant. And I've been meaning to, go in that direction anyway. But I think like my personal view on building on chain, especially so far, has been like, I've since I was probably a kid, and especially like in college, I took a gap year to try to start a company. And since around like pretty young, I've sort of thought of myself as like a founder type. But as I've sort of grown up, and, you sort of see things and you start to question like, well, why do I think of myself as a founder? Like, is it just that I want sort of like, is it sort of like a mimetic thing where I see these, big successful founders and just sort of like want to be that, but it's not like actually like sort of a sincere desire or something. It's just sort of like, wanting to be like that or something. And so I'm like, is this actually sort of like a good fit for my actual preferences? And one of the things I've sort of realized over years is to some extent it is, but to another, like I'm someone who I've never really in a work context committed to something for several years. And granted, like I'm, not that old, but I've had so many, chapters of several years long to do that, but sort of done things like 2 years at a time, roughly. Like I just mentioned with base colors, that was sort of like a several month sprint or something like that. And so like, I don't know, like I have a hard time for me personally, like sort of saying like, yeah, this is the thing I want to work on for 10 years or for the rest of my life, which I think is, not in crypto necessarily, but in, traditionally it's sort of considered like before you had the liquidity of like a token, the way to, have a, build a successful company, you had to either, get acquired or IPO. And that's going to take like on the IPO side, like a decade plus or in a lot of cases. And so it's like sort of this long-term commitment or else shorter term thing that inevitably sort of like, by definition, to some extent, like wouldn't work out. And I think that's less true with crypto now. I mean, you think about like an extreme example of like Pumped Out Fund has been extremely successful. And I don't know how long that's been around, but like not that long and like made a ton of money. And it's not like a public company, but like it doesn't need to be. And then there's all these tokens, Clanker came out, 5 months ago, 6 months ago or something.
It seems like 2 years ago, but it's only been 6 months. Like
exactly, extremely successful. So I think crypto breaks the rules a little bit, but basically, like I've sort of come into these builds with the perspective of like, I'm going to start this thing that I think is interesting. Don't exactly know where it's going to go. And with base colors, for example, I was like, I'm going to build this collection for every color on the internet. I sort of have an idea of the core of what I want to do with it and how I want it to look and feel, and the sort of various decisions of like I want it to be fully on chain. This is going to be the supply. This is the price. This is what the website's going to look like, etc. And I was sort of open to like launching that, and like there's no obligation especially for NFT collections. There's like the default is not that you continue to work on it after it's launched. Like for most NFT collections, I would say, you launch it and then it's out there, and like maybe you are sort of tweeting about it or whatever, but you're not like building much more.
No,
in a lot
not
of
really.
cases.
No. Yeah.
And so I was open with base colors to just like launching it, and it is what it is. It's out there, and go knock yourself out, and it'll sort of be there and grow alongside me, sort of like how I've described my attitude towards it more recently. But then when it launched and it did well, I was like really just motivated and sort of inspired to continue working on it, and had several things that I knew that I could and wanted to do to sort of improve it and just sort of like expand that launch attention and launch window into something that could give it sort of the legs to sort of stay in people's minds as like, if someone else went and tried to do the same thing on base or really anywhere, even people would be like, well, like, what are you doing? That already exists. Because if you only spend a week on it, like people might remember, but they probably won't. And even if they do, they're like, oh yeah, that was like a 1 week thing. But here someone else has come along and like they're actually doing it legit. And so I wanted to sort of establish as the colors collection, and sort of had the motivation from launch to do so. So I kept working on it, but then sort of continuing to just sort of keep my head on straight and evaluate the situation. Like I said, like after, several months, I'm like, I'm just sort of pushing on a limp thread here. Like I don't need to sprint on this for, indefinitely. Like I'm happy with what we've done with it. I do have ideas for sort of what's next, but even those feel sort of premature to push out now. Like I can come back in a year and do those things, and it'll be sort of like, oh, like base colors is back. Like that's kind of cool. So like just sort of like thinking about these things from first principles. And that's why, sort of bringing this segueing to Veil, like you've built a lot of things. We talked about dynos, waveforms, a lot of NFT collections, but in general, you've built a lot on chain. Veil came along and was sort of this like, sort of spike in attention, got a lot of sort of, buzz, and people were really excited about it. I was really excited about it, given, my history of, my digital identity has been pseudonymous. I value privacy, probably, I'm not as good about it as like I should be or would like to be, but it's hard in practice. And Veil is one of these things that makes it easier in a lot of ways. You can just start a wallet cold without any attachment to your personal. So maybe you can sort of just like introduce how it came about and what made you go, all in on it basically.
Yeah, I mean, okay, where do I start with this? You set me up well here. So, like, obviously done a bunch of stuff on base, a bunch of stuff I'm very proud of. But I've always, and like anyone who knows me or follows me knows, like, I've had a desire to always want to, like, stay in the space and work in the space, because I am one of these people who are genuinely here for the tech. I think we're building something that's exciting, that can scale, that can make, real meaningful impacts in people's lives, both like financially and digitally and whatever other way you want to phrase it. So like, I kind of longed to build something that was like long lasting or long term. And I've been big advocate for privacy. It's very clear to me, why on-chain privacy is important. Where it would be a blocker in terms of having traditional finance come on chain, having, the trade privately, paying people privately. There's a million use cases. I always get asked what fails for. I'm like, possibilities are endless basically. But like I've seen, where I've seen where it works and where it doesn't. And I felt that there was definitely a gap on it on base. There was, not that I was aware of, or, there was no privacy tools that it's, let's say, any real adoption that I was aware of at the time. It was like something that was somewhat niche, but I felt it was something that was needed. I was a Tornado Cash user previously. I'm not based in the US, but when the sanctions came in, I, wasn't comfortable using it anymore. It became difficult to use. The front end disappeared and whatever else. So it was kind of something I shied away from it and missed. I was a user of Rails too, which is another great product, but not on base. And I was like, okay, look, I think there's a gap in it here. Massive fan of what it is. Think it's super important. So like all these kind of things lined up together, and I was like, I'm longing to want to build something. And like I say this in like a couple of the calls I'm in, and I don't mean to like, put down NFTs in any way, but I wanted to build something I felt was a bit more impactful or meaningful. I think NFTs are fantastic. I'll continue to build them, but I hope my point's coming across. I want to build something a bit more, let's say, broader, or a protocol, let's say, of some sorts. So then I was like, okay, let's mess around with Tornado Cash. Let's, I had a good understanding of how it works, fundamentally and somewhat technically, but then was like, okay, I need to ramp up on this. Spent a couple of months getting up to speed on it, understanding the code, understanding what's going on with it. And just the more and more I dove into it, I was like, this is like, amazing tech that's been built into so many, little lines of code. And then I was like, it was clear to me, and it's clear to a lot of people, Tornado Cash is a fantastic product, but like it has obviously run into issues with who is allowed to use it, or, more so the fact that everyone's allowed to use it. And then I just felt, okay, we've got a lot of data on base. We've got a lot of data, even more data on Farcaster. And I was like, there's probably a way here that we can, leverage something to kind of build a trusted set of users. And for anyone who doesn't know what Fail is, I suppose, or what Tornado Cash is, it's essentially like a privacy protocol that allows you to make a deposit in and then later withdraw the deposit and not link it back to your address. And the analogy I always give, which kind of simplifies it down, is imagine if there was, a tip jar on the table and everyone put $5 people put $1 in. But because you're depositing that $1 in from your address, or let's say everyone is writing their name on the note. So then when you go to claim the note later on, you kind of have to claim it back to say, oh, that's mine. And you're linking yourself back together. So zero knowledge proofs allow you to essentially withdraw the funds without saying basically who you are, essentially. So the idea is how you get privacy is that you put in you got $5 notes in a tip jar. And one is removed. You don't know who has removed it. All you know is that it is one of the 5. And that's essentially how it works. So where was I before that? I've lost my train of thought.
Well, so I can sort of jump in for a second.
Yes,
so like one thing that's sort of interesting is, first of all, I didn't realize you had the background in like sort of this interest in privacy over a longer period of time. And I totally resonate with what you're saying around like, NFTs are great. You've built them. I've built them. They're fun. They can, demonstrate things that you can do on chain. They're cool in a lot of ways. And I think they're going to be even cooler. Like right now, we just have like sort of NFT PFPs for the most part and some other stuff. But eventually, you talk, everyone talks about sort of NFTs in the metaverse and sort of in games. And like these things can all start to get quite a bit more interesting, I think. But having said all of that, like there's sort of entertainment leaning and whatnot. And, building a privacy protocol is quite obviously sort of going to be more of like a meaningful mission. And you can get meaning out of the fun and the entertainment and whatnot as well, but it's just sort of more, leaning in that direction of practical value for people and everything like that's actually useful and whatnot. And so anyway, like one of the things I think is interesting, given your sort of tip jar analogy, is it does, like, the technology can fully be there, but it depends upon the quality of the anonymity, so to speak, depends on the, size of, exactly. The size of the, the number of people in the pool, because if, that technology is all well and good, but if I go and deposit, 0.1 ETH, and then, 2 days later, I take the same amount out, and there's no technical connection between, me on the deposit and me on the withdrawal. But if no one else is using the protocol, then, it's, I've revealed who I am. Like if literally no one else has, then it's 100% sure that it was me. And if it's not literally, but, there's not many people, then it's like sort of a higher, it's a higher, degree of confidence that you can sort of identify the person. So how did you get over this, like, or how are you getting over, have you gotten over this sort of initial, like, sort of chicken and egg problem of that?
Yeah, so it's like what people call the cold start problem. So essentially, like, you've got something that works really well, but it is one of these things that uniquely crypto that needs a lot of users. And this is something I'm in the process of trying to do and trying to fix. At the moment, I'm trying to do it through, I suppose, incentives, by being like basically essentially paying people a small amount of money to come and use Veil and leave deposits in it. So what I'm doing is paying for them to come and use the privacy protocol. They deposit in 0.1 ETH, and in return, they need to deposit in for, I think, 14 days is the window I have. And at the end of it, they'll earn about $20 to $25 worth of Veil. And the idea here is that, like, I'm basically paying for users at the start to get this flywheel going of, a bigger an onset, with the idea that, okay, people will be like, okay, this is pretty private now, I'm comfortable using it. That's one way I'm trying to tackle it. But the other way, which is definitely which will be far easier, is via integrations. So like my end goal is to try and get Veil integrated across, DApp, X, Y, and Z. And then capturing their volume into the pools, and in turn making it quite a private tool.
What would be not to like reveal like your roadmap or your leads list or something, but just roughly speaking, what is like an example of a good partner for that? Like, is it like an exchange or like an app, or what is that?
Think of like a trading platform that you might use. An trading platform might be a good use case of it. There's something they definitely would need or want, because front running and wallet tracing is a really big problem, for anyone with any size of a following, be it big or small. But then also, if you think about like institutions that want to come on chain, and they might want to take a position in a certain coin, and they generally follow the same patterns or use the same wallets, and it's pretty obvious who and what they're doing is buying when you've got tools like Nansen and Arkham and whatever else. So there's like an ask for these type of protocols, these type of users, to have some sense of privacy on chain. And so that would be a target market of who I want to try and get in to enhance the privacy of the pools, really. So I'm in discussions with a couple of them. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, go ahead, because this is going to be a little bit off topic.
No. Yeah, so like I'm in discussions with a couple of platforms at the moment who are interested in integrating into Veil, because they see the value in it, really. And they have a want from users to have some form of privacy. They've run into this issue of, essentially their users. In this, we're not talking about me and you buying $50 worth of ETH or $50 worth of a coin. You're talking about like big institutional players or whales who want to take positions and are just, end up not getting the position they want because of tracking tools, here and there.
Yes. So one question I have, I've used Veil, so I'm pretty familiar with, how it works. One question I actually don't know the answer to is, can you take out, like, I know the input is somewhat like it's a multiple choice, not custom. So like you can put in, 0.01 or 0.1 or 1 ETH, I think it is. On the way out, do you have to, let's say you put in 1 ETH, do you have to?
You have to remove. Yeah.
Okay. So the exit amount or the withdrawal has to equal the deposit.
For now, it does. I mean, the end goal is to move into like, so you kind of have like fixed denomination pools, but you can go another path where like they're kind of called complex pools, and that's something that's on the roadmap. I wouldn't say short term, but more medium term, because it just makes everything a lot easier. Basically, essentially, instead of depositing into one of the 5 contracts, you'll be depositing into the 1 contract. And then the idea is that you'll educate your user that, okay, we're all depositing into the same contract. But if you come in and put in 0.0777 and you withdraw 0.00777, they're probably going to notice you. So you might on the UI on the way in, you might suggest that, okay, these are the amounts. You can put in any amount you want, but you should probably put in the same amounts on the way in, and on the way out, then, you're leaving a balance within it. So like Veil will become like this private wallet you just have, that's just sitting there for you to use, and you can withdraw any amount you want in and out. I'm kind of come up with a workaround for the moment where you can store your notes on chain. So like, for example, if you wanted to put 1 ETH in, you're probably better off putting it in 10 deposits, and then leaving your 10 deposits in Veil. And now I have a new feature where you can like stack your balances, store your notes encrypted on chain, and then view like a history of, what notes you put in, what is spent, what's still available. So that would be the better way. Again, it isn't the best UX. I'm definitely well aware of that. It definitely makes integrating with others a bit more difficult and challenging. But these type of tools, like, they do work quite well when you can get some good volume on them. So it's like a case of like, I'm at the fork in the road here. Like, do I continue down the path of pushing these tools and, doing the best I can to make the UX improve it? Or do I say, okay, there's a Veil V2 coming, let's say, and we're going to go with the, let's say complex pools that let any amount in, including, ERC20s, whatever else. So that's like, medium term plan. That's something I'm well aware of and trying to fix. I think like it's definitely aimed like, privacy is a spectrum. I casted about this the other day. Like, Veil is quite niche for who it's for, who can use it. You have to be a Coinbase customer, and you have to be verified on chain with them, and you have to be willing to be okay with that. There's always a misconception. Yeah, go ahead.
You don't have to be, right? You just have to, in order to do the larger amounts and like the verified pool, but like you can dabble with Veil without the verification,
correct. Yeah,
right?
There is 2 smaller pools that anyone can use. And this morning I removed the requirement for the token holding just because I felt, it seemed a good utility. Like I'm not one of these builders who are afraid. I'm not afraid to pivot away from what I feel mightn't be, best choice for the project long term. So I sounded quite restrictive. So I've since removed that. But yes, there's small public pools, but they do have quite strict limits. They can only take in, I think, 2 ETH a day each pool, which isn't that much. But like you said, it's a great way for someone to dabble into Veil. To be honest, for a lot of users, like the 0.0, I think the larger one, the 0.00. But I'm so bad at saying what the numbers are. 0.05. Yeah. That one there, which is what's that worth at the moment of Ethereum? Probably like 7 cents.
Probably like $0 or something.
Oh man, stop! I think it's like that one's worth like, what is it, $100 or something like that. So, you could use that to not be a Coinbase customer and get privacy pretty well. That one, that feels kind of weird. Like sometimes it gets a lot of use, sometimes it gets none. So like, again, it's like around education, and like, it's hard because like, it's it's like when you need to be private, it's generally at that time and place. And you're like, oh, I wish I had some form of privacy right now. Whereas like with these kind of tools, and they're all like this, you know, you can't just hop into them and hop back out of them. You know, you do have to give them some time. Whereas like if you're willing to like, if you're interested in Veil or you're in any way interested in some form of privacy, you know, it's probably a good idea to leave in a couple of, and I would recommend the smaller, you know, deposits, leave in a couple of small deposits, you know, so you have, let's say $200 worth of deposits sitting there and you have the ability to take them out in a week's time. And in a week's time, they're going to be quite private and very hard to do any time analysis on. But like if you instantly need it today and like, oh shit, I want to buy this coin right now privately. I mean, it will work in theory, but if you are someone who people actually might try to track, you know, seeing you come in then back out, you know, you understand the product, which is great. You know, it's a lot easier to have this conversation with somebody else who understands the product, and then more importantly, understands the drawbacks.
Reason to use it.
Yeah, no, the reasons to use it, and also I suppose the limitations the current implementation has as well.
Right.
And so, so I'm well aware of these issues, and I suppose this is a good segue into like they're launched, built it for like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months in my spare time, and kind of teased it a bit on Farcaster. Didn't really go too crazy with it, like hinted on building privacy protocol and what it was, but kind of just, I'd say just sort of cold launched it, if that makes sense. It just sort of playing out. And
it was several months of working on it, because it's and you mentioned before, like took some months of sort of like studying Tornado Cash as well. And interesting because I mean, I think it's a compliment to the build that it's for the user. It's like, you know, you have with all these crypto things, especially anything that's people haven't used before, like you have to actually try it to understand it. So people who haven't tried it, you know, it's going to sound all complicated as, you know, like zero knowledge and all these things. And but it's super simple. Like you go to Veil and you open the app or whatever, and it's like you put in a deposit, you get a secret note. Later you put in the note and you withdraw the money. It's like, it couldn't be simpler, but behind the scenes, like I imagine the tech was quite complex. And so it's like nice that it came out into this like really sort of elegant thing that is, you know, for someone like me who's not overly technical or anything, like don't really, I just stay away from complicated stuff, basically. This is not complicated at surface level, but underneath the hood, it was probably pretty hard.
Yeah, like you summed it pretty well. And this is something I definitely struggle with when I try to talk about it, like in text form or in like on Twitter or on Farcaster. Like you summed it up pretty well. Like it's quite a complicated task what you're doing, and it sounds very scary. And you know, you're putting money in and you mightn't get it back out if you don't store. But like, you know, end to end when you use it, like you said, like you kind of just have to try it. And like there's a small bill that's what $10 or something like that. Like, you know, you're going to pay a 5-cent fee on it, you know, basically nothing. So like it's something that like it's very hard to explain how I'm struggling with it. Maybe it's just me, but I struggle to explain it in simpler forms, where like I've leaned into recently doing like these screen share videos where like it just shows you like what it is. And I feel like it's kind of like definitely easier because like you said, you know, you probably didn't have much knowledge on zero knowledge proofs or anything about it, but you managed to use it, and now you get the gist of it end to end, what's going on, what its limitations are. So it's definitely a product that you just kind of have to give a go and try. Under the hood, like I had previous to this, I knew what ZK proof, swear, and knowledge was, and whatever else you want to call it. I knew what it was, but like I didn't have any area of expertise in it. So. But I didn't want to just come into this and just start trying to hack it together. You know, I wanted to have a good understanding of what was going on and like how and where I would make changes to it. So like for anyone who doesn't know, like the difference between this and Tornado Cash is that you have to be a verified user. What a verified user is currently is that you have to have a Coinbase account. You do what's called an attestation, an on-chain verification. That basically says you're not putting your name, or don't believe what people tweet me every day, you're not putting your name or your number on chain or any of your personal details. You're essentially just putting a flag against your wallet in a smart contract to say you are a Coinbase customer. So Veil reads that and says, this is a person who we can say is verified, has done KYC to a high level. I would personally say the Coinbase verification is to a high level. Others might disagree, but I think it is. So you can kind of have this trusted set of users that you're willing to commingle or mix your money with together to seek privacy. So then the idea is that you aren't commingling funds with someone who is OFAC sanctioned or, North Korea or something like this. The idea is that, okay, if we get some good people together to use this one tool, we can have privacy in it. And I was hinting at it earlier, like privacy is a spectrum, The tool is private. You cannot trace a wallet between two deposits, but there obviously is limitations to the anonymity, the anon set size to be willing to hand over or to willing to have a Coinbase account and verify your address on chain. For some people, this isn't an issue. They don't care if they have a Coinbase account anyway. And they buy and sell their crypto there. So why wouldn't they attach their address to other people? It's not for them. And I completely get that. So that's why I think privacy is a spectrum. I'm mixing two things sets of people that don't really like each other, people who are okay with KYC and then privacy people. And, you've got people who are on the far side who are blockchains should all be like Monero or, completely private and we shouldn't have to sign any sort of KYC or anything to do with that. This is not what it's about. And I do get that. That's how I first got my first bit of Ethereum by converting electricity into, ETH, and I gave no KYC. When I did the other way around, to offboard or to turn my Ethereum into money. I had to sign up to a Coinbase account. And I was like, what is this? Why do I have to give over so much details?
Right.
But for me, I personally, I'm seeing a direction we're kind of going in, and leaning into the Coinbase architecture on Base, where they brought out something similar called verified pools, where they want, trusted, where there is a demand for people who want privacy, but don't want to start spinning up a VPN or, using deposit scripts or want to bridge to different chains and are okay with giving away not their privacy in terms of what they get at the end product, but more so they're okay with saying, okay, I have a Coinbase account, I'm okay with this set of users. And
I like that sort of anytime I basically I have this sort of pattern match that's going off, which is when I hear you mentioned sort of you're doing this thing, you're building privacy protocol and doing this thing that privacy people often have a problem with, which is sort of the bit of KYC, but in a way that makes a lot of sense for all the reasons you've described. And whenever I hear something like that, I actually, it's funny because it's hyper relevant for this example, but I think of Coinbase and the specific sort of, data point that I keep top of mind, which is that because Coinbase is, obviously one of, if not the most successful traditional company, as opposed to a current cryptocurrency itself or something, but one of the most successful companies in crypto in the world ever. And I think their core sort of bet early on, obviously they've had to execute through, so many things to, stay as there were popular exchanges around the same time, Coinbase has emerged through all that. So they've had to do a ton of things along the way. But I think the initial thing, the bet that they had to make, which was essential to what became, Coinbase today and all their success, is that they took this industry, which, crypto in whatever it was, 2010 or no, not 2010, 2012, I think Coinbase was founded.
Around then,
and at the time, it's really, not regular people who are interested in crypto. It's deep, cryptography people and people who are interested in Hal Finney's stuff and whatever else, these really niche community. And all these people were very libertarian, Roger Ver and all these people. And so the idea of doing anything sort of working with government or regulators was totally against the, ethos of the people who were in crypto at that time, which, people are using Silk Road, all these sorts of things. And so it reminds me of that where, Coinbase in the early days said, look, we're going to take this industry and we're going to work with regulators. We're going to make it, work sort of legally for people because we think that even doing that, it's really interesting and can move the needle on freedom for people around the world without having to be like shady and, ignore the laws. Like we think we can actually work with regulators and whatnot. And that was like a decade plus mission. Like we're just seeing this year, a lot of the sort of like attacks on them have been lifted. They've spent like tons of money on legal fees and everything to try to get things right over a decade plus. And so what you're doing sort of reminds me of that. And it's like, look, guys, like I get it. Ultimate privacy is one thing. But if you're willing to compromise on this thing that sort of has a stigma in the world of extreme privacy, but actually makes a ton of sense, like maybe that's the actual way to get a lot of people a lot further on the spectrum of privacy than they otherwise would be.
Yeah. I think you've summed it up really well. It's like consumer privacy is how Bankless mentioned it when they featured it, and that's kind of stuck with me. I'm like, yeah, like it's a tool that is available and easy to use, with certain trade-offs in terms of what you might have to give over to Coinbase or whatever else to actually use it. And like it is niche, but I feel it's a good take on what's currently missing on chain, and definitely on base.
Is there another, like, were there other options that you considered besides Coinbase verification? Not to say that there are any better options. I'm just curious if there are other alternatives.
Yeah, no, there
would consider or would consider. And could you potentially, like, right now you're going with the one, you could potentially add these others as like alternative verifications, but you could also have like separate pools potentially, right? With like different verifications for people who are comfortable and like keeping them separate. I don't know if there's any reason to really do that unless you have one sort of form of verification that's like significantly more trusted than another. Then maybe the pool is separate because the people who have the more trusted verification want to be sort of identified as such, where the lower, they don't want to be like, oh, they might have verified to this lower trust thing. We want to
like tiers.
Yeah. So have you thought about any of that?
I have, and I think that's a great point, but then you run into you run into making your anon sets for each of these pools even smaller, if you know what I mean. And then because I think that's the battle, is like this cold start problem is like, how do you get over this? To answer your first question though, did I look at other verifications? Yeah, one of the ones I wanted to do was Farcaster data. I was like, there's so much data here. And you can tell pretty, you have the ability to tell if someone on Farcaster is real or not based on, a bunch of different things. Do they have wallet connections? Do they have a good, NANAs? Do they have a good score? Do they have this? And that was how I initially went with it on launch. I just didn't have the Coinbase verification ready, but I wanted to go live with it. I was like, okay, look, we'll do it first, like a small trial run. And I whitelisted people by their SIDs. And then brought the on-chain verification in, I think 2 or 3 days later. But that was definitely a route I wanted to go down. I was also thinking of something, like talent protocol, like you get your builder score and stuff like this. But what stopped me pretty quickly with the Farcaster one, and this is no fault of Farcaster team or the protocol in any way, it was something that happened unrelated to this, but kind of shed light on it. So I have a group chat with a couple of builders on Farcaster, and then all of a sudden this guy started talking in our group chat, he was the name had changed in the account, the PFP has changed, but it was it was a small group, so we knew who it was. And he basically was like, oh yeah, guys, I'll just let you know, I bought this account off someone. And he's like, I'm going to leave the chat now, but I just want to let you know. And he just bought this, it's his Farcaster account, because it derives off basically keys, so you can just buy and sell accounts. So I was when I saw that, I was like, okay, so if I go and spend all this time integrating Farcaster in, but then someone just has the ability to go and buy a verified account. And I'm not saying you can't buy, you can probably buy a verified Coinbase account too. But I assume it's probably a bit harder than going onto a decentralized platform and buying a Farcaster account. So when I saw that, I kind of was like, okay, I think I'll put that on the back burner just for now. And I'll lean into the on-chain verification, because at the end of the day, I want to build a product that's safe for the end users, but I also want to build a product that's safe for me as the builder and developer of it. I don't want to end up in prison or jail or, facilitating illegal activities where I can't. And I think, leveraging that, how do I say it? Like offboarding that action to someone else, like Coinbase verification, makes your life a lot easier. If you're like, okay, these guys are handling that. And like, there's definitely like other paths you can go down. There's like, I think World ID and some other things, and they're growing day by day, that like, and especially Power of ZK proofs as well, is where they can have like, verification, but without giving over any data really, on chain, let's say. So there's like, I've been approached by a couple of these, and it's definitely on the roadmap, but like it brings up questions like you said, like let's say Jake is a Coinbase user and you don't have, let's just name, another verification method is XYZ, but you don't have XY, you've verified a veil through Coinbase. Then I tell you that, oh, okay, I've added an XYZ and they can enter the pools too. But for whatever reason, you are unhappy that they can come in because you feel XYZ is not that safe of a verification process, or, whether it is or not, but you just don't like the fact that they're now mixed in with it too. And like they are valid concerns as well that you would have. So that you're kind of navigating that to them. And then you go, okay, right, then do I make separate pools? And then all of a sudden you end up with like 10, 15 pools. And then you've got pools of the same amount. And then your non-set just becomes very difficult to manage or to actually spin up. So these are like, these are the current. And so this is a good segue then to like why I ended up, I suppose, like, so when I launched Veil, I didn't know which way we received. I wanted to build it because I wanted to experiment with ZK tech. I felt it was something that was needed from definitely me, definitely, you, who I spoke to, I think just before launch, and a bunch of other builders who thought, this is something that's, worthwhile putting effort into. But then it quickly, thankfully, it blew up and had its moment for a couple of weeks and got good coverage, and people liked the idea. Like I said, some people didn't like the idea, but anyway, it became very clear that this was a full-time gig, or had the potential to be a full-time gig. And this was something I'd wanted for a long time, was to, break into crypto full-time. And it sort of was like, this is something that I did, before launch. You don't really have deadlines. You are the deadline. And it's like, I'll just push it back a week. I kind of wanted to get it out before Christmas, and I just didn't, because of, life got in the way, or I didn't have things ready. And like, I was the one who was deciding, because I had not done some massive launch party or announcements. It was on me to decide, am I ready to go? Do I want to go? But then once you launch something, and you, especially when you attach a token to it, you have, and you should, people have expectations of you to continue to grow this out and to maybe make changes they feel are needed quickly enough. And I quickly realized, I was like, okay, I can't juggle this and my job. And I was like, right, this is probably the best chance I have at making the leap full time to crypto. And I did that within, a couple of weeks. I had taken time off directly after the launch, when I saw how, hectic in a good way it was, how busy it was. So I'd immediately taken some time off work, and then had called them up and said, listen, like, I'm going to need a bit more time off. And then had turned into, I'm actually going to take a leave here. And we went our separate ways on good terms. Like, they were a good employer. They employed me for, I think, 8 or 9 years in total. Really cool team. Really good place to work. But like you said, like, I maybe not to the point where you're saying, you do things for 2 to 3 years. I had worked somewhere previous for, let's say, 5 to 7 years. I had worked there up until, I think it was up to about the 7 or 8 year mark. So I was kind of due a change naturally anyway. And I, they were kind of aware of this too. And I was kind of searching, where do I want to go? Do I want to go further down the career I was currently in? And, but I kind of reached the, not top, but like, in technical terms, I definitely reached the top of what's available to do. And it would be like, maybe upskilling in a new area. And I was like, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do the 9 to 5. And I was like, no, I enjoy crypto, and I think I can do it right. So I was like, I want to be I want to do this full time. I picked a fantastic time because as soon as I went full time, ETH has gone down about 50% since I've done it. But luckily, luckily we have stable coins. We've got things like this that you can, utilize to make sure you have enough runway to keep going. And that's something I've kind of been protective of. And, I haven't gone and hired 10 people straight away. I've hired a front end dev. I've hired one or two other contractors to give me hands with other parts. But I want to build this long term. And the beauty, I think, of this is that it is a long term project. It's something that's, think about it isn't comparable to these guys, but think about Uniswap and Airdrop. These aren't things that are flash in the pan. These are protocols that stand the test of time and are needed really no matter what. And I feel like Veil has that potential as well. It isn't just the flavor of the month, whether it's NFTs, AI, daily runner coins, you name it. You know what I'm talking about, the stuff that just kind of comes and goes. I feel like it's something that's a bit broader. So I feel it has, it's a runway to keep you going at it for, multiple years, hopefully. And that's where I took on some investment via, luckily and thankfully, Coinbase Ventures, which I couldn't have asked it for a better crowd to get involved with Veil, because Veil is very heavily it's not a Coinbase product, but it's aimed at Coinbase users. So to get investment directly from them is as good as it could get, I suppose, for me and the product.
Yeah, I've always thought Coinbase Ventures is super underrated in that basically they've just, I don't know if they're still doing this, but they've started just sort of investing off of Coinbase balance sheet, and they have basically, they kind of see everything because they're Coinbase, and they just have the ability to sort of index everything new in crypto. And people have their different approaches on investing, but I personally, especially with crypto, I sort of it's really hard basically to know whether something is going to be, it's one thing to say okay, this is going to be a success or this is going to be not. But it's another to be this is going to be a success on the order of, a $10 million acquisition versus $100 million IPO versus a $1 billion, $10 billion, or one of those, once in a however often, this is a Facebook at the Series A or something like that sort of investment.
Yeah.
It's so hard, I think, at such an early stage to differentiate between orders of magnitude on success, that I personally looking at things and saying, especially with early products, this is, I don't even have an opinion really on the product. I love the builder. I love, they're building in crypto. I'm bullish on crypto, and that's enough. I'm going to invest here. I don't know if, how well it's going to do. And you just sort of do a yes, no based on founder/team and market, with willingness, hopefully the product is interesting, but you want to give room that they might pivot or whatever. And that's sort of enough. And you just make a yes, no call, and you make sort of a uniform investment amount. That would be my particular flavor of venture investing. I just think Coinbase is in such a spectacular position to do that with their ventures team. And I agree, they're underrated in the sense that everyone knows Coinbase. And then there's a handful of, crypto VCs that, there's the crypto specific ones,
A16Z and stuff like this.
Yeah, there's A16Z, which is even more broad, but they obviously, they're probably the leader in crypto specifically. And then there's, this specific Paradigm and, whatever, these other ones. And then Coinbase Ventures sort of sneaks in there because everyone knows Coinbase, but Ventures isn't their main thing. But I think it's just that portfolio could do extremely well in the long run. And, now that they've invested in Veil, of course, it'll do even better. But I think, it seems like a great partner, especially given, like you said, you're targeting their audience, at least to start their user base, and they could probably help with that. So makes a lot of sense. And I was just stoked. When we first met, I assumed that you were either, roughly someone like me who was, doing things in crypto and not working a full-time 9 to 5 and just sort of going from project to the next. in crypto and working on your own or whatever. And, or maybe like working with a crypto company, but doing things on the side. And then when I found out you were like doing more of a traditional 9 to 5 and just doing crypto on the side, I was like, man, this guy's been prolific with all that he's building outside of a non-crypto 9 to 5. And so it seemed to me like just sort of like a matter of time until you were going to be where you are now, which is full-time in the space. And as someone, you know, I've taken sort of a couple of leaps at various points of time with basically, you know, quitting whatever I'm doing in terms of a job and not knowing what was going to come next, or originally really taking a gap year out of college to bet on myself, and then ultimately went back to college or whatever. But like basically taking this leap, not knowing exactly where you would land, but betting on yourself. And so I just get stoked to see, you know, friends and, you know, people I like and respect go and sort of do something like that. And so stoked for you to be where you're at now, doing this, and can't wait to sort of see where it all goes. I have one more question. I know we're like way over on time, but if you have time,
I do.
a tactical thing, that I'm curious, like, you know, another somewhat contrarian thing, you know, we talked about earlier, like sort of going the verification route whilst trying to appease privacy people, sort of a contrarian move. Another one I would say is like when you launched Veil at the time, on almost every token story was something that was launched with Clanker. And
Yep.
I know like you like the Clanker guys like you and Veil, but you didn't launch a Clanker. You did launch a token, but you did not launch a Clanker. And I'm curious, like your, you know, decision around doing the token right away as you did, how you did the token, you know, reserving various allocations. I know all this stuff is like extremely hard, and that's why I'm asking about it, because I'm still trying to learn myself. Like,
Yeah.
how the heck do you think about this stuff when you don't, like, it's something that you would like to be able to figure out, you know, 10 years later, and then retroactively be like, okay, yeah, this is the best way to start, so that's how we're going to start. But unfortunately, you don't have that foresight. You have to try to guess up front how you're going to want to do everything. And it's just like really hard. So I'm curious, how you thought about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And probably two questions in there. First, I suppose, is the Clanker question. The reason I didn't go to Clanker is I love Clanker. I think it's a fantastic product. I have used it in the past, you know, when we all used it on Farcaster at the very start. And I think it's great. But at the time, I know it's since changed, you basically put all of the tokens into the liquidity pool. And I knew that Veil was something that I would need a treasury for, be it for advisory roles, be it for maybe investments, be it for incentives. So it was something that didn't fit the product I was building. And also they take a fee, which I think is a fair fee. But I mean, I have the ability I know how to write a smart contract. I know how to deploy a liquidity pool. I have a good understanding of what tokenomics should and shouldn't be like. So I felt I was able to tackle it myself. There is time to look at the Clanker ecosystem. I think it's fantastic. And, you know, I do wish I was maybe part of it. But I do have a good relationship with the proxy team, with the Clanker team and proxy, and there's definitely like a mutual respect between us. And I think they get it, like, you know, why I went this route and maybe, you know, why I wouldn't have gone this route. I think they've recently added dev buys, so you can like buy on launch, which is a cool feature, and you can like vault a certain allocation. But like these options weren't, and if they were there, maybe I would have went down that route. But it was, you know, I had been building out Veil before Clanker was around, so I kind of always had ideas of, you know, what the token would look like and what the allocation would look like. To answer the question, how did I do the token allocation? Well, I suppose it was difficult, and I think I got it right, but I definitely could have done things better in terms of like providing more liquidity initially at the start. And the token, I mean, it had, I think I put 2 or 3 ETH in at the start, not knowing which way this is going to go, you know, but if I knew the scale it was going to go, I would have put in 10, you know, just to make the token a bit more liquid. I was very lucky that I got listed on Aerodrome quite early, which allows me to essentially incentivize people to deposit LP and to boost the liquidity pool. So like the more liquid your token is, the more stable the price is. So that's probably one area I wish I changed. The allocations I worked fairly closely with. So Deployer is an advisor on Veil, and so is Fioris. You might know him or might not from he's not on Farcaster, he's on X. Big base
Meow, you
guy.
said?
Meow, yeah, Meow.
Yeah,
I
I've
can't
seen that
remember
guy. He's like collecting every NFT. You know, he's got like half of it base stock or something crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he does. Yeah. So he's the co-founder of a protocol called BMX and that's on base as well. So he has his own DeFi protocol. So they should have Deployer, who is like an advisor when it comes to like technical stuff, you know, to bounce ideas off. And then Meow is like, has his own DeFi protocol. So he kind of gets tokenomics really well too. So like bouncing it off them really helped a lot. So like I would definitely don't underestimate the power of like bouncing your ideas off, you know, close friends and other builders who've gone down this path. And it's a massive value add. It really
was
is.
this before Deployer had done Banker?
Yes, I think it was. So me and I did work with Deployer back on Hamchain in, I think it was July or June.
I'm sort of
had done some
surprised.
stuff.
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but obviously it's you know, worked out, you know, so far reasonably well for Banker and Clanker, both, to put it mildly. But I'm sort of surprised that he actually did that they did Banker via Clanker for the same reasons sort of you've described that you didn't. I think one thing I have realized, I love Clanker and have done you know, probably a couple more Clankers than one might say that I should have. But I'm sort of like battling. I'm like, I feel like I'm a one-man army. There are other people doing it, but I'm like battling this stigma of coining by just like coining sort of so much on a whim that it's like almost funny. Whether it's like Clanker or Zora or whatever. And there's like, you know, I'm trying to do things somewhat responsibly and whatever, but like, you know,
it's your money, fun, you know.
That's your money. Like, don't like, if you see me doing 12 coins, like they're not all going to go to $1 billion, like probably none of them.
I know. For personal responsibility is something people just think, you know, don't, like I saw people giving out that Farcaster does the trending coins now, gives you notification on who bought, you know, the X amount bought in the last while. And like I saw some backlash on it, and I'm like, you know, no one is making you press the multiple buttons you have to click to go and buy that coin. You know, there is personal responsibility in these things, and that's all been my response to these things. Maybe because this is my third cycle, and I have been burnt many times before, and I just have that experience, and other people don't. So maybe I'm looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. But like that's all been my take. Yeah, but to answer your question with like, Banker just sort of happened. Like Deployer didn't deploy the coin, but he just sort of like took it on board. So do you remember he had the Banker bot on Farcaster that would reply and you could buy and sell stuff before the Twitter one? Maybe you didn't know about it, maybe you didn't.
I knew about that, but there was the coin, the bot was working before the coin or something. I was definitely late to figure everything out, but I was aware that it was on before Twitter.
So the bot, and you know, Lee Jr., big NFL guy. He actually deployed it. As far as I know, got Banker. Got the Banker bot on Farcaster to deploy a Banker coin. And then like, because it was deployed via Deployer's Banker bot on Farcaster, he got the fees and he just sort of took it on board and was like, yeah, let's run with this. And like, just that's really where it went. And he just started building it out, brought us to turned it into the whole private terminal that we use now, brought it onto X. And like, so that's really like, that's the history of it. And I don't think I'm misspeaking, but yeah, that's like, it was just sort of happened. Like he didn't deploy the coin himself, and it was deployed under his bot. And he was like, yeah, I like this. It's out in the open. Sure, let's go in this direction, you know? And
I didn't realize that. It's interesting. Like there's a whole nother conversation here, but, you know, Clanker is great for certain things. Zora is great for certain things. You know, there's all these tools like some of them aren't great for much, but a lot of them are great for certain things. but they're not for everything. And like,
No.
it's just, it's hard to figure out the best way to go about some of these things. Like with Banker, for example, I think probably if deployer could do it over now that he's investing a tremendous amount of time and everything, and like he probably would have done his own token with, to give himself the various freedoms that like you've given yourself with Veil. And so I think that was definitely a smart move by you. The particulars of the allocations are sort of a separate question. It sounds like good. You seem reasonably pleased with how they are thus far, which I think is great. Like
you'll never get to 100% right.
Right.
There's still stuff, you can't. And the thing is, there's nothing you can do about it. I can't restart it again. You just kind of have to go with it and make tweaks where you can, or try and adapt and pivot in certain directions, that are meaningful to the project really. And yeah, that's it. Like it was like I could have spent weeks staring at the tokenomics chart and putting it out there. But then you just kind of have to just have to run with this and see how it goes. And it's what I like about Veil is that like there was no cabal behind it. It was literally launched just by me in my house. It was as fair launch as it could be. The tweet and the cast were sent out exactly the same time. And I, didn't give anyone the contact address ahead of time. It was all very open and just put out at the same time. And then I just let the market decide what happens with it. And that's my view on the price of, like, I cannot change the price of what sale is in the market. But what I can change is, the utility around it and the protocol to change the price, to let the market decide what they think of what I've built or what I've done and what that value comes with. So I'm not someone who, and I have never really done it. Like you'll never see me post a picture of the Veil chart on my Twitter or on the Veil Twitter. It's not because I don't want to. It just isn't my style. Where it's like the protocol and the token isn't just about number go up. It's about building a product that has the token involved in it, and will still have staking. So revenue goes back towards token holders and has some form of utility, and rather than just be like, yeah, this is going to $10 billion. That's my approach to these things, I suppose, is under promise, over deliver, I suppose what you could say. You could also say like, just be realistic with things, I suppose, and see what happens. See what let the market decide. You can't control it. You can only just control, you do your best with the products, and adapt it when needed and pivot when needed, or build it out where needed. If tomorrow some fantastic verification protocol comes out and it's as true and tested as the Coinbase verification process, I would definitely be looking to add it into Veil. Or if I'm able to, if I think that having mixed pools and where you can deposit in and out any amount is more beneficial, then that's the direction I go in. Instead of spending time and money on, marketing and volume bots for the token and stuff like, this is not really that kind of product or token. And I'm happy it's not. Personally, I love Memecoins. I think they're great. But I don't think we need 7 million of them. I do like to see, how do I phrase this? I do like to see different things being built. Like look at BankerBot, for example. Fantastic tool that is, has a meaningful use case on chain. It makes swapping super easy. Natural language. There you go. Look at like Banker itself, makes someone who wants to deploy a meme coin or a token or tokenize something super easy too, and fair launches with it as well. So like big fan of I suppose projects or protocols that are actually innovating in some form rather than just copy pasta the same stuff.
Yeah, well, I think Base
or
also has shown.
Yeah, I mean, you want me there, or the QR code, the QR.fun, or that you're building. super
Yeah.
cool idea, super innovative, like super unique, and you're basically getting the attention for a day of your project, and like you're letting the market decide what that's worth. And of course, because you're building it, every fine detail is meticulously looked over. Like the post you wrote about being in bail were like better than I could ever write myself. So like, these are things that like I value, is that like people pushing the boundaries, and just doing things a bit different, or like how we met with base colors, instantly loved the idea of it. Thought you could see that you put more than 10 seconds of thought into it, if you know what I mean. It was
Yeah.
clear as day. And this is the stuff. This is where I hope we start to pivot back to soon, and crime season ends and we just get back to like, building cool tech. But I still do enjoy dipping in and out of the trenches. I'm not going to say I hate it, I do like it, but I do long for a bit more normality, let's say.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and
I've seen you're insane.
Yeah, I am, and I'm just like you. I mean, I like dipping in the trenches. I really honestly didn't until I don't know, 6 months ago, probably less honestly, a few months ago, where I was like, all right, like I'll check out Dex Screener and like I'll go and I'll put money in these stupid coins and figure out like how much money I can use in a day and whatnot. But I don't know. It's like it's fun, but it gets old quick, and it's fun to dip back in once in a while and whatnot. But it's like not. It's just not really like it's not who I am. Like I'm not like a short-term day trader. Like I'm someone who likes to put a bunch of money in terms of percentages of my money into Bitcoin and market cap weighted equivalent into Ethereum, and then pick up some Solana and some Doge and some other stuff, and like sort of everything else is kind of like play money with some smaller stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you get lucky, then you get more play money to play around with. So it's like something like that. But I mean, I appreciate what you said on QR and base colors, and agree on Clanker and Banker and everything. And there's some other there's some really cool projects out there. Like I think Base has basically shown. I mean, people Base is so new still. Like they had on-chain Summer 2. It's like less than 2 years old, and so it's this weird thing where Base sort of like has taken over Ethereum to a large degree in terms of like activity and whatnot, and Ethereum is older, but like when comparing to Solana, because like Base, most of the stuff I do is Base or Solana. I'm mostly building on Base, but do some investing or whatever or investing is probably too official of a word, but some of that trench behavior is going on for me on Solana, and like these are where the action is, I feel like, and it's this weird sort of dynamic where Ethereum is quite a bit older than Solana, but Solana is quite a bit older than Base, and so it's like hard to figure out where everything should be. But the fact of the matter is, like, Base is less than 2 years old, and it's just like I think for where it's at, given that is even with the fact that it's on top of Ethereum and the fact that it's from Coinbase and whatnot, like it's just a pretty impressive ecosystem, and you've seen it from day one. And I think what's been revealed so far with like the market cap of coins on Base, it's certainly some exceptions. Like it's kind of hard to the market, but at least with like stankers, the ones that are being valued are ones, like you said, with products attached. Like it's really hard for these like pure meme coins to sustain value on Base, whereas on Solana, they've been able to sustain these like higher market caps. And I think it's just sort of like a difference in communities and what they value, and how to value all these things from meme coins to genuine crypto products is really hard. Like I don't think people know quite how to do that yet. And like the market will ultimately decide, but it doesn't need to be super reasonable about it. Like it just is going to be what it's going to be, and it's hard to sort of foresee. So anyway, I know we have gone way over time, and obviously we could keep going for a lot longer, but
honestly, the whole night. Yeah,
let's kick it to a V2 or a sequel rather. And
definitely a couple of months in touch and see where it goes. But this has been super cool. I'm sorry it's taken us this long to do it, but really enjoyed it. Yeah, really enjoyed it, and I hope whoever listens to it enjoys it too.
Awesome. Likewise. Well, I'm glad we're able to make it happen, and hopefully see you at FarCon. And
Yes, please. Look forward to that. We'll catch up again.
great talking. I'll talk to you soon.
See you later. Bye bye.